I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. Yeah, man. I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with the hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Mike Washington is on assignment. He thought he might be able to get in, but not so much. And I think Thursday is out of the question, so we're going to have to charge him up for the game when we get him and double his tab. But he's good for it. With that being said, we got Drew, as you know, one of the best standoff hitters you can bring in for a pinch hitter. Since we're getting into baseball players, it's officially knocked off with the non-conference play, starting off with the Cactus Jack Classic and MLB HBCU Classic last weekend. We can say that. As we start to close down and get ready for March Madness, the madness may have started in some places. We'll see. CIAA name too, and some of the stuff on and off the court. Whatever. We'll talk about that maybe a little more in the news segment. With that being said, welcome to episode 628 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast, the show that's covering the sporting HBCU all things HBCU sports for institutions large and small, from NEIA to the NCAA. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports, culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics, and facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs and the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, along with my co-host of the day, that is Charles Bishop and A.D. Drew. We're filming from our home studios and sending a signal live to KSOH 1230 AM studios with the Texas Radio Hall of Famer, multi-Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper. And I got the chance to see him earlier today as I went over there with Dr. Kevin Granger as they were getting the golf team and, if you would, the basketball team fitted for suits. And some of these guys were talking about this is the first suit that they had ever had. So this was courtesy of a sponsorship deal Kevin Granger was able to get with the Department of Athletics and Suit Mart. So shout out to Suit Mart. Got to see and meet the owner while I was in there, and had some good prices on some suits. I plan to go back over there and support the establishment, since they support Texas Southern University, particularly the Department of Athletics. But it's a deal for all the men. At some point over the next 2 years, all individuals that associated with men's programs will be fitted for a suit. And they just started with basketball and golf today. He said his next chore is to make sure that he can get a deal with a clothing line that provides dresses for the women's team. Nice. So with that being said, if there's anybody out there that wants to make that happen, particularly in the Houston area, call up Dr. Kevin Granger. He's looking to find some ways to get that done. With that being said, Charles, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Doc. I'm doing well. Like you said, we're speeding towards March Madness. We had some great action over the weekend, great games this past Monday, and crack of the bat is going on. Got a lot of stuff going on.
It's a lot of stuff out there. Championships have been announced for indoor track. So you're right. Absolutely. A lot going on indeed with many of the sports that you suggested. Drew, how are you doing today?
Number one, I'm jealous. You know, y'all go from Michael Strahan to a new suit deal, man. I went to the wrong school if I wanted some professional style gear, man. Y'all just get I didn't know Houston was the fashion capital of the HBCUs.
It is now. That's according to Granger, it certainly is.
All right. Number two, did you see the end of the game? Down 20 in the first half, and we came back and beat the little cats down the road. Yeah, I'm doing good over here.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm so glad that you sent me the film because, as I said, that's part of the journey that I want to get on. I got to see one of those games, and after watching that on film, I can imagine only being there in person. A credible game. We've seen them versus rivals in different sports, and people have their legendary memories of clutch shots at end of the games, whether it's men's and women's overtime games, some double overtime games, triple, four overtime games throughout the millennium, I would say, since these teams have become rivals in games. But that was another classic one for between the House and CAU. The Maroon Tigers and the Panthers got it done, and credit to Morehouse. They got the victory and made things interesting as the season starts to close out. And the question is now, based on some off-court incidents with Lane, how that might figure in final standings. But when that picture gets a little clearer and we get an update, we'll make sure we bring Drew in to give us what that looks like.
And I have that update. So
okay, we'll come back and make sure we get that. Let me go to Charles and see some updates and news that he wants to put on the table. We'll go back to Drew since we do have an update. Out as they say on the not radio but the streaming platform, we'll tease that out a little bit.
Let's take a look at it as and this comes to us from HBCUGameDay.com. The nation's only HBCU swim program wins its second title in 3 years. Howard University, the nation's only HBCU with an NCAA Division I swim program, has once again made history. On February 23rd, the Howard Bison's men's swimming and diving team clinched the Northeast Conference Championship title for the second time in 3 days. The 4-day competition in Geneva, Ohio, saw the Bison maintain a consistent lead, culminating in a decisive victory secured by their performance in the final event, the 400-meter freestyle relay. So definitely want to send shout-outs to Howard Bison and their men's swim and dive team for another banner season winning the championship.
Oh, man, good stuff. Shout out. Back to back.
Yeah.
We had the video streaming platform. Shout out for Howard and their media and marketing team as they got that information. Man, they were celebrating. You seen a picture with them on the stand. That was pretty good. You also seen a picture where they were taking a coach, which my understanding is a tradition for those swimming teams, and dunking him in the water as they jumped in behind him.
Gotta take a dip.
That was great to see the excitement, and you felt like you were there, much like you saw the excitement for that basketball game. With that, I'm gonna go back to you, Drew. Now it's time as we kind of slowed it down a little bit. Now you can give us the update in terms of how that played out, based what's coming from the SIAC.
Well, we'll start off with the impact of the game from Saturday, which was the Morehouse double overtime victory over Clark Atlanta. And why that game was so important is because it gave Morehouse the tiebreak, not only over Clark Atlanta because of the season sweep, but over Albany State, who was currently in second place, and over Edward Waters, with whom we were tied after this weekend. So that game meant more than just a victory. It was very important for seeding because no matter which tiebreaker the SIAC would decide to go to, between a two-way, a three-way, a four-way, between Morehouse and any of those other three schools that I named, Morehouse owns the tiebreaker. No MEAC stuff going on right here where this team win and this team lose and this team get nah. It's just straight up. Morehouse got the tiebreaker. If you tie with Morehouse. Now, probably you may have seen it, you may not. I'm not going to dwell on it. Unfortunate incident on the court yesterday between Clark Atlanta and Benedict. The game was ruled a no contest, which has affected the standings. So right now, the update is a win gives Clark Atlanta the East still. A Albany State win and a Clark Atlanta loss gives Albany State the East. So from a Morehouse perspective, with their game being ruled a no contest. We cannot win the East now. The highest we could finish is second, and that would occur should Albany State lose and we win on tomorrow. And Edward Waters is a solid number 4. Even if we lose, we would be tied with Edward Waters record wise. But once again, we own the tiebreaker over Edward Waters. So Morehouse will finish 3 or 2. Albany State will finish 1, 2,
One.
or 3. Clark Atlanta will finish 1 or 2. And Edward Waters is stuck at 4 now.
Good breakdown. Great news. The way to cover that and get that information out to folks that were wondering how that affected that happened to see the video. And I like the way you said that. We won't dwell on that. Certainly, folks have had a chance to see what that looks like. But on the court, it's fascinating to see how this is going to play out in the SIAC. In a lot of ways, teams are trying to get away from Miles College, which is obviously the number 1 seed down in over, I should say, in the West Division, as long as they can in the tournament. So that's why how you finish, obviously you want to have the regular season crown in the East, but also in terms of those matchups going deep in the tournament. This is another reason why that becomes important. Charles, what else is on your mind in terms of that? And I'll come back to you, Drew, to get some additional thoughts.
Well, I had to get to this because I know everybody kind of caught it last night, but talking about Christian Ings, HBCU Hooper goes makes SportsCenter's top 10 with a viral windmill dunk. I mean, I can't even describe it, but young man was up in the air. Thrilling senior
Forever.
Thrilling senior night performance. Norfolk State guard Christian Ings delivered 2 electrifying dunks, propelling the Spurs to a 69-60 win over Morgan State. These standout moments secured the win and instantly put the HBCU Hooper in the national spotlight as clips of his 2 slams went viral overnight and landed the Philadelphia native 2 spots on SportsCenter's top 10. So shout out to Christian Ings.
Shout out. Not just 1, but 2 spots. Before we go out to you,
exactly.
Drew, I got a chance as I was flipping back and forth on the streaming because just all the games pretty much for the MEAC on ESPN Plus. And I have it to make sure I can get my HBCU coverage as part of my business deal. But that being said, that North Carolina Central Delaware State game was fascinating.
So
in terms of the fact that last second shot when you thought that game was over, sent it to overtime, a 3 about right after the player got in across half court. He shoots it up. It was clearly good too, and you was like, "Oh, it's checking. It's good."
Yeah.
Then South Carolina, Delaware State said they want to get it done. And so the ball kind of fumbles away. Guy in the right place, right time, right under the basket. He gets it up, basically a layup, and Delaware State sends North Carolina Central home with the L. Going back to you, Drew. What else did you want to add as these hoop mania? This stuff is getting excited. We got to make sure we show some love to CIAA. I'll do that after you give your update.
Well, since you're gonna do that, because I was gonna get into that, I would just throw these couple of things. You mentioned people trying to stay away from Miles, Dr. Cavil. It's not just Miles. This conference is a conference of matchups. You can have a team in second, third place, and there's that team at the bottom they just do not stylistically match up with. And we've seen this throughout the conference, because when you actually go deep inside some of these games, you be like, they got swept by that team? Yeah. So stylistically, people are trying to avoid certain teams as long as they can. Leonard got crazy over there.
Right.
Yeah. And
right.
Last thing before I turn it over to you, let you get on the CIAA. Congratulations to Albany State over there and Coach Sean Gale, as Albany State has accumulated their most victories since 2003 or 2004, as they've won 17 regular season games. My counterpart over at Albany State, Terry P, sent that over to me yesterday in a little bit of a braggadocious kind of way, but I'm gonna let her get away with it. That this is the most games that Albany State has won since like 2003.
Shout out to Albany State. Credit to that. You're right. Great point. Give some love to Clark Atlanta on the women's side, since we are doing the other side. Make sure we talk about that, as well as Tuskegee. Miles over there on the women's doing a lot of work. The CIAA time tournament in Baltimore, and shout out to Under Armour. They bring the players over there and they get shoes, and with the deal that they have with the basketball tournament, and those players seem extremely excited when they get to tour the facility. And
it helped that it's right there around the corner from the gym anyway.
Exactly. I mean, literally
around the corner from the arena.
Perfect partnership, to your point, Drew. CIAA matchups on the men's side, I'm going to go over the top three and just how they finished. And obviously, they go by divisions. Drew pointed that out a little bit earlier in the season, how that was different in terms of conference record on one side, divisions on the other side when you look at between the SIAC and CIAA. Top three teams: Virginia State, number 1. 2 is Bluefield State. 3 is Lincoln. That's in the Northern Division. In the Southern Division, that's Fayetteville State, Claflin, and Johnson C. Smith. Should be interesting there. Women's side, as things finished up this past weekend, top three teams, starting with number 3 on this side with the women, Bowie State. Number 2, Virginia Union. Number 1 is Virginia State. So we see Virginia State getting it done, both men's and women's, to their credit. Southern Division, you have number 3, Claflin. Number 2, Livingstone, and number 1, Fayetteville State. Be interesting. Those early round games actually kicked off today with the women. So a lot going on in CIAA, and we'll get you those updates as we move through the show. We want to get into our first break. We're going to come back to the other side and do our traditional major division poll rankings, and we'll start with the women because chivalry is not dead on this show. With that being said, we'll be right back after this first break.
Planning an event? From weddings to corporate functions, CMJ Events LLC brings over 15 years of experience to make your vision a reality. Based in Metro Atlanta and serving statewide, even internationally, we provide versatile event planning and authentic catering cuisines tailored to your needs. Whether it's pre-game meals for student athletes, fundraisers, weddings, corporate functions, CMJ Events LLC is your one-stop solution for exceptional service and unforgettable food. Our diverse culinary heritage means we cater to all cultural tastes, dietary needs, and food restrictions, making every meal uniquely yours. Let's make your next event unforgettable. Visit us on all social media at CMJ Events LLC or email us at cmjeventsllc@gmail.com. Also give us a call at 404-664-3882 so that we can start planning now.
This is the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, Kenyatta Cavil of Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Come mix it up in the lab where the course lecture is in session every Tuesday from 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live, YouTube Spreaker, or the BCSN app, as we discuss all things about the HBCU sports culture, including exploring the week that was in the sporting HBCU diaspora, as well as the upcoming week of HBCU sports. With me, the Dean, the College of HBCU Sports, on Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Course lecture dismissed.
You're looking for the latest information on Southern University sports, the Southwestern Athletic Conference, and HBCU athletics. There's only one place to go. Tune in to the Carlos Brown Show, exclusively on the Black College Sports Network.
Thank you guys for what you do for HBCU athletics. This is a fantastic avenue for all of us. This is our ESPN, so we love what you guys do. Brian, AD, Roy, all you guys at BCSN. We really appreciate what it is that you guys do for us.
Compress the analytic data with your hip-hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they want a lot, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Mills inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Charles Bishop and AD Drew. That being said, let's get into these poll rankings as we start stuff off, as we said, with the women. We do have a team that dropped out this week. of the top 5, and that was Jackson State Tigers. They dropped out after a tough loss to Alcorn State, surprising a lot of people, to be frank with you. They fall 11-3, so they're still in the top half of the conference, those first 4 that are big in terms of seeding. They're still right there in terms of chasing a regular season championship. So it'll go down over these last 3, 4 games, depending on what your schedule looks like in terms of finish. With that being said, let's look at those receiving votes. Jackson State, as you imagine, they're at the top of that. So while they fall out, they didn't fall far. Essentially at number 6, at 11-3, as we said, 41 points. Behind them, Alabama A&M Bulldogs that just keep chugging along. Kudos. In terms of what the Bulldogs have done in this first season under Coach Thornton, really changing things around, 20 wins and counting as things keep moving forward, are right there at that number. He's 12-3 in terms of conference race, and right there in the mix too, as this will go down the stretch to see who finishes on top. And next one, receiving votes there, basically at number 8 is Coppin State Eagles. They took 2, so they're struggling a little bit there, 7-4 after they got off to a pretty hot start. They've faltered a little bit of late, but they still are in the mix in the MEAC. And finally, in terms of those receiving votes, the Grambling State Tigers, 8-6 with 19 points, pull up the rear end at number 9 in terms of those outside of the top 5. So let's get in the top 5. At number 5, we have that new entrant. So Howard Bison, quietly, they lost that earlier in the season. Norfolk State, which is just really different how you talk about the number 1 team in Norfolk State that seems to just continue to get it done. But Howard Bison are 10-1. They've won several games in terms of just really getting it done in the MEAC, 56 points. So they jump into the top 5 as they were not ranked last week. And number 4, Texas Southern Tigers. Although they had 2 big wins after tough losses, did not win in fashion that maybe hurt them a little bit in the poll rankings. But at this point, you just want to keep winning, and they did that. They're 62, just right there. So they did fall a slot, previously being ranked number 3. Bringing us to number 3, North Carolina A&T, the Aggies, 12-1. They gained a first-place vote, the first-place vote that the Texas Southern Tigers lost, 63 points, so they just edged out Texas Southern, but they moved from the 5 spot to number 3. Bringing us to number 2, Southern Jaguars have closed really strong in the second part of the season. They had 12-2, 1 first-place vote, 73. They had that rematch win against Texas Southern, and they are propelling themselves forward as they hold strong at number 2 with 1 first-place vote. Bringing us to Norfolk State Spartans, 11-0, and they just keep trolling along, if you would. As they said, NSU Invitational, according to Leonard on the show. 6 first-place votes, 79 points. They remain at number 1, so Norfolk State Spartans continue with the number 1 ranking in week number 8. Can anybody find a way to take down Norfolk State? I see it, but at least I have to put it on the table. With that grin there, I'm going to go to you, Charles. What are your thoughts on top 5? And can anybody secondarily find a way to stop Norfolk State Spartans?
I think the only team that has a shot, and that's the last game, I think, before the tournament, Norfolk State takes on Howard. I think that game is at Howard, if I'm not mistaken. But you can't say enough about a team that's 24-4 overall, perfect in conference play. They're definitely deserving of that number 1 spot. With regards to the Southern Lady Jaguars team, I think I saw literally the best quarter of basketball, men or women's, that I've watched this past season. I mean, from a defensive perspective, they limited Grambling to only 4 points in the quarter, and just the way they played connected, both on the offense and defensive side of the ball, it was tremendous to watch. It was beautiful basketball to watch. So shout out to Barrett Williams and his Jaguars in terms of getting it done against Grambling. It's going to be a very interesting road contest. A&T is still doing what they do, but Texas Southern going to Alcorn on Thursday. I'm paying attention to that one. Alcorn, big win over Jackson State, just a different team with Destiny Brown back in the lineup. So interesting road trip for Texas Southern going to Alcorn and Jackson State this weekend.
I like that. And to your point, Alcorn has probably two of the biggest wins outside of where they're ranked. They got a win over Jackson State this past weekend. They got the win over Southern. One of their losses. Obviously, Texas Southern has the other win. And so if you're the Tigers, this is a tough road trip. They can find a way to get it done. You can say they certainly deserve the number one ranking. I mean, the number one spot in the conference, I should say. If not a share of it, because Southern still wants to get a piece of that too. Southern has wins over Texas Southern. They have a loss to them. But Norfolk State Spartans, they have a win over North Carolina A&T. That's sitting at 3. They have a win over number 5. They have a win receiving votes over Coppin State as well. So you talking about impressive, not just what we know about, what many people talk about, those 2 wins over SEC, but that challenge of where you place A&T in the rankings. One of those losses in non-conference play talks about that number 1 team. So when you talk about these teams, you're scratching it. It would be love to see some matchups. A regular season SWAC MEAC matchups would solve some of this. We'd have to get in the preseason type tournament to get A&T involved as well. With that being said, let me go to you, Drew. What are your thoughts on the top 5?
Is there a ranking higher than number 1 that we can use, Dr. Cavil, for Norfolk State's women? Because when you talk about a dominant team, when you have a team that has a scoring margin in conference of damn near 29 points, number 1 offense, number 1 defense, a 28.7 scoring margin. When you comb through the stats of the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, Norfolk is number 1 or number 2 in damn near every statistical category. When you comb through the individual stats for the MEAC, Norfolk has somebody ranked number 1 or number 2 in every important statistical category, and a couple of them that most of y'all, unless you're a stat nerd, don't even look at. They got somebody ranked 1 or 2 out there. And then I go over and so enough about Norfolk State there. When I look at Texas Southern and Southern, and trying to distinguish between these 2 teams. First of all, it's going to be interesting to see, since they did split the season series, what is that tiebreaker going to be should both these teams continue on their trajectory with both teams only having 2 losses. So that's going to be one thing that's interesting. But what I really find interesting is, we talked about that 29-point scoring margin in the MEAC. Southern is at 14. Texas Southern, although they're number 4 in your ranking, they've only got a 7-point scoring margin, Dr. Cavil. So it shows you that these good teams can get it done in different kind of ways. And A&T, we always are wishing for that 3rd HBCU. Well, this year we've got a legit chance of getting that 3rd HBCU into the big dance with A&T coming out there on the women's side. So now, if we get 3 in, what are the realistic possibilities we're going to have a first 4 with 2 of those 3? I'm just throwing it out there for discussion. Right there.
That's an excellent point. I think Norfolk State has a chance to throw some ointment in that, but maybe A&T.
I think Norfolk has a realistic chance of getting off that 16 line.
I agree.
One spot. Yeah. Now, whoever wins the SWAC and A&T, they're still probably on that 16 line, and it will be fun to see A&T and a SWAC winner, a Southern or a Texas Southern in a first 4 game in a, we can't even call it the HBCU National Championship because you still got Norfolk out there, but it would be fun to see one.
So let me ask you a question real quick.
But I think that in because of the Colonial, if A&T is able to do the regular season and the tournament, I think they at least slide to a 15 seed.
Oh, okay. That was the question I was going to ask. I mean, if A&T finishes out
because of the conference strength.
with
the
wins, could they get to 14?
14, I think Norfolk State has a better chance to get to 14 because of those non-conference wins. SEC, they're obviously their conference ranking is going to drag them down a little bit, but at some point you kind of hedge and you look at both, particularly non-conference. So that's a really good question in terms of teasing it out. 14, 15, and you got, this is the thing I always tell people, remember, let's say even though Norfolk State may be seeded 15, depending on matchups, area, the committee has the right to slide them down. So they can slide them to a 14 seed based on how things work out region-wise. And if they're closer to a 14 seed, even though they might legitimately a 15 seed, they can slide them there. And the opposite can be said as well, to Drew's point. They can be a legitimate 15 seed, and they can slide them up to a 16 seed if other folks are regionally in a better position to slide them and make the ranking 15. So they have that autonomy.
Quick question, Charles. When you think back on that Jackson State team from, what was it, 2 years ago when they got that 14 seed and compare them to a Norfolk now, do you see any similarities between those two teams?
That's a good question. In terms of the way both of those teams can rebound, like Jackson State could beat you up to death on the glass, and I kind of see that same thing with regards to Norfolk, just keeping possessions alive, how important it is, those second chance opportunities. There's similarity in that regards, and then to have a pretty dominant post player as well. So.
Good analysis and great talking points. Man, now you want us to go back into canon and look back at that a little more in terms of what that goes on. Obviously, Norfolk State has to find a way to finish it off as Jackson State did in terms of last year at least, of what that looks like. Year before they got stubbed the toe a little bit to Southern, which still stuns a lot of folks, but they come back following year with a lot of vengeance and made amends to that for sure. So kind of fascinating what that looks like. I do want to say this as we talk about some of these matchup finishing stuff off. Thursday, we have Prairie View at Jackson State, Southern at FAMU, Texas Southern at Alcorn State, and Grambling at Bethune-Cookman. It's going to be fascinating with some of these matchups down the stretch of what that looks like. That Southern FAMU, I think it's going to be interesting as a road game. You got to get the edge of Southern. FAMU has shown that they can make some statements, but you would have to give the edge to Southern. But that Texas Southern Alcorn State, you've seen Alcorn State, particularly at home, be able to beat the better teams record-wise in the conference. Can get it done. But it really gets interesting on Saturday. Texas Southern and Jackson State, in terms of that matchup, is there. You have the rivalry game, Alabama A&M and Alabama State, Prairie View and Alcorn State, Southern and Bethune-Cookman, Grambling at FAMU, and you have the rivalry game, if you would, between Pine Bluff and Valley. So fascinating to see how things end up as things start to really close up, or will somebody find a way to get an edge and knock somebody off the top of the mountain? We shall see. These Thursday and Saturday night games will be interesting at this time of the year as we start to transition from frenetic February to March Madness. With that being said, we'll take our second break, come back on the other side, and it's time to unveil the top 5 of the men division and see what things are going on in week number 8, what is taking place there.
Since 2002, Empowerment Resources, Inc., a nonprofit organization, has empowered more than 1,500 youth and adults in Duval and surrounding counties through its programs Journey into Womanhood, Girls Mentoring, Life Skills for Teens, and Parenting Education Coaching. To get involved with programs, volunteer, or donate, visit www.empowermentresourcesinc.org. Follow us on social media, facebook.com/empowerment.resources and instagram.com/empowermentJAX.
human voice has always connected audiences with experiences. Major brands all across America have trusted Kever's voice time and time again. Conversational, powerhouse, intelligent, and sincere. That's the voice you need for your creative marketing process. KeversVoice.com. Kever's Voice, Kever's Voice, KeversVoice.com. Always on, all the time.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit HBCUPrideJoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
When it comes to professional learning, teachers deserve better. From the leader in online learning, Stride brings you the Stride Professional Development Center, an on-demand library of mobile-friendly courses that gives teachers choice and flexibility, allowing them to learn anytime and anywhere. Our dynamic courses provide bite-sized learning and help educators advance their knowledge while also gaining professional development hours. It's time you take charge of your learning. Visit us today to get started.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they want a lot, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Will with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Charles Bishop and AD Drew. That being said, let's get into the men's division. We do have changes in the top 5. So we'll see what that looks like this week. Dropping out, Florida A&M went into a stumbling block as they got on the road after going on the road, getting a couple of tough wins and coming home and getting it done. They dropped out of the top 4 after losing to Alabama State, Alabama A&M. Shout out to Coach Pettaway. He said Alabama State would give them problems. I'm not sure if he called a shot with the Bulldogs, even though obviously that's his team. He looked forward to seeing that matchup. But Rattlers have 2 tough losses on the road. They kind of blunt a little bit of their momentum, but they will be dangerous in the tournament. And it'll be fascinating to see how they close up, which means it's even tougher for the Southern Jaguars with that matchup coming up as well. Want to get back to their winning ways. We'll see what that means. Let's look at those receiving votes. Texas Southern, it seems as the clock turns from frenetic February and gets into March Madness that they just seem to turn on the gas in terms of the keys, if you would. But they're starting to do what they do as they get 2 wins this weekend. Can that travel on the road? We shall see when we talk about the top 5. Those receiving votes. Alcorn State Braves, I should say, at 8-6. They continue to stay right in the middle, getting some big wins, tough losses. Be interesting to see how they close up on the season. Howard Bison, tough loss for them. They were in the mix, but kind of hit the road skids, sitting at 7-4. With that being said, Alabama State Hornets are just outside. This is a team that many people have said keep your eyes on. We're starting to see why. They're at 9-6, quietly getting it done. Right there in the mix, tough team. Behind them, Florida A&M Rattlers. As we said, the Alabama State Hornets gave FAMU their first loss after they rolled off so many victories in a row. Be interesting to see how that goes down the stretch. Let's get in the top 5. When we're talking about the top 5, let's move in the top 5. Bethune-Cookman Wildcats. Fascinating to see this team. And excuse me on the logo there. That's going to get a lot of people's attention. Previously, that was the Rattlers, and they traded places, as you can see. Bethune-Cookman 10-5. They go on a roll and get 2 victories after losing 2 at home. That was unexpected for me. If they can get healthy, this is a serious team to keep your eyes on. 53 points as they jump back into the top 5 after being out a couple of weeks. Interesting to see how they finished. At number 4, South Carolina State Bulldogs. We had a non-conference matchup between South Carolina State Bulldogs and Bethune-Cookman Wildcats. Love to see more of that. But the Bulldogs sit at 8-3, solid. They move up a spot, quietly are getting it done, 69 points. Moving us to number 3, Jackson State Tigers. People didn't believe in the Tigers, but they quietly are steady in terms of what they're getting done in conference race. They're at 10-4, and they can be a problem at times. It'll be interesting to see, again, them in the tournament as well. How they close out the season, fascinating with that as well. 88 points. Number 4, that matchup this coming up weekend should be fascinating too. Can they kind of solidify themselves at the top of the conference, or will Texas Southern Tigers have something to say about that? Always a tough matchup between those two. At number 2, Norfolk State Spartan, 10-1. At number 5, with 5 points, 103. They stay at number 2. It's interesting to say when you just think about Norfolk. They do what they do, but they haven't won games to the magnitude you've seen in the past. But it hasn't changed their record, and they're in a solid position to basically lock up the regular season of the conference. And then, obviously, the tournament is in Norfolk, Virginia. They do have that home court advantage, if you would, not play at home literally, but in the city. Fascinating to see how that goes down. Number 1, not getting old for the Jaguars. 7 consecutive weeks. The Southern Jaguars are 13-1. At this point, it's hard to question what the Southern Jaguars are doing. They just win. Gritty bunch, deep bench, a lot of players, and you better come physically prepared to play in that basketball game, or they will embarrass you. 6 first-place votes, 104 points, number 1 ranking. They've just done so much on the season and how they defeated several teams in the top 5, particularly when you stretch it up to the top 10. Interesting when you see that matchup. Although the MEAC dominated the SWAC, they still edge out Norfolk State at this point in terms of being number 1, and they've done it for 7 straight weeks. With that being said, Drew, what are your thoughts on the top 5 in week number 8?
What's in the roux or the gumbo in Baton Rouge? Because not only do you have your men at the top of the SWAC, but you have your women at the top of the SWAC. So there's something in the it's something that they put in the gumbo down there, and I wish and there are a lot of people in the SWAC wish they could figure out what their recipe is. I want to kind of talk about a team that fell out of the top 5 this week. That's Florida A&M. And let's talk about Milton Matthews. Let's talk about this interesting stat that I just came across. Now, Matthews, one of the top shooters in this conference, and this is something you really don't see too often. He's in the top 10 in field goal percent in the conference. He's shooting 46% from the field, 46.2 to be exact, and he's number 1 in 3-point field goal percentage, shooting 42.2%. Very rarely do you see those two numbers that close together for a top scorer in a particular conference, where your field goal percentage and your 3-point percentage are within tenths of a point of each other. So I just find that very interesting there, Dr. Cavil.
Yes.
Also, and last point before I give it up to Charles, it's interesting when you look at the scoring margin, because this time of the year, that's one stat that I really look at. How are teams winning? Are they winning those 1 possession, 2 possession games, or are they proverbially blowing teams out? And for those other teams down there, or they get blown out? And South Carolina State, Norfolk State. South Carolina State, 11.6 scoring margin. Norfolk State, 11-point scoring margin. Nobody else in the MEAC matters, because their scoring margin is not even relevant to this conversation. So you got your top 2 teams, but you rarely see where usually the team in first place has the best scoring margin. Not in this particular case. So it's going to be interesting, especially when those 2 teams get together in tournament time. You know why it's going to be interesting? Who's number 1 in offense, everybody? South Carolina State, 82.5 points per game. Who's number 1 in defense? Norfolk State, 68.9 points per game. interested with the stylistic matchups there. Just a couple of things I just thought I would throw out there to everybody just to kind of mull. I'm pulling out my inner Mike Washington as we having this conversation today.
I love the data. Shout out to Mike. With that being said, you talked about the tournament matchup between Norfolk State and South Carolina State. Guess what? We get an early glimpse of that this Saturday.
Exactly.
Charles,
it don't matter until it's win or go home.
But I'm going right there because South Carolina State hosting Norfolk State and Howard this weekend and Monday. I mean, you go back, Norfolk State overtime win over South Carolina State at home. The next game, South Carolina State blows out Howard on the road. And now they got both teams coming in this weekend. So that's going to be a fascinating matchup with regards to Norfolk State and Howard going down to Orangeburg. Same being said, Saturday night, you got a 1 versus 5 matchup. Southern at Bethune-Cookman. That one's going to be a fun one. And Trey Thomas is one of the tougher guards in the SWAC in terms of keeping him out of the lane. He's long. He's bigger than most guards. But Southern plays such phenomenal defense. It's no wonder Southern and Norfolk State are both 1 and 2 in the polls. They're number 1 in their respective conferences in terms of playing defense. So that's just something to keep in mind. And you take a look at it, big weekend for Jackson State too in terms of taking on Texas Southern on Saturday night. So you got some great matchups going down the stretch here.
Charles, there's only 2 weekends left, so every weekend is a big weekend now.
You know what? You want to have that momentum going into the tournament. I don't want my momentum blunted. This is why it's a big weekend.
Yeah, I agree. It's a big weekend. I like to make sure that you finish off the regular season. And this is where I do agree with Carlos. I think there is something about being able to hang a banner for your regular season. Yeah, it may not count as much in terms of the representation and the branding you get associated with winning the tournament. But I like anytime you get a chance to win a championship, I want my championship. We'll deal with the rest later. I want my championship. So I'm interested in the end of this season because somebody is going to get at least one championship. Then you have the chance, if you can get the one championship, the double-double is really nice when you can put that up.
Tempo?
To your point. Go ahead, Drew.
Do I want to win the marathon or the sprint? And that's always the big question that we have. And while every coach is competitive, they want to win a championship. They want whatever kind of hardware they can get. If you ask a coach, true to a man or a woman, I'd rather give up that regular season championship for that tournament title. That's number one. That's like at a track meet, Dr. Cavil, I'm blowing everybody away in the prelims and the quarters, and then I get to the finals, and either I have a false start or somebody gets me at the tape, man. I'd almost rather I got into the finals if that's the performance that I was gonna have.
The thing I take a look at nowadays is if I win the regular season championship, it at least guarantees that I'm playing some postseason ball somewhere. So that there is some consolation at least if I don't take care of my business in the tournament. I know I'm going to be CIT somewhere. I'm going to be playing some postseason ball.
Charles, I'm trying to go to prom, not to sock out.
Hey, it beat not going at all and sitting at the crib. So that's why the regular season still has something to me.
That would be a fascinating question in terms of coaches. I think you would get some split in there. I think you would have some that would talk about the regular season and several, to your point, would talk about the postseason. I think when you get to the AD side of it, I think it's really clear. I think all of them want the postseason.
They want the check.
Yeah, which is a shit.
But Dr. Cavil,
but the reason I say they're posters is oftentimes they get bonuses tied into both.
Right. Right. But when you do that poll, Dr. Cavil, ask a coach who's actually won both, and those are the ones who you really need to value their opinion more than I've won a regular season title and I've won a tournament title. And I've coached basketball, and I've been a part of regular season champions and tournament champions. And the years that we won the tournament, we did not win the regular season. I'm sorry, there's nothing like walking off that court with my peers in the conference like this, raising that championship on the last day of the tournament.
Sure.
Not the trophy on the first day of the tournament for what I've done on the season. Just my feelings on it, having been in that situation.
Hey, it's a very limited sample size since we're talking about this research from a perspective. There's only a limited sample size. I think if my memory is correct, there's only 2 coaches currently in the SWAC that have won both. And there'll be 2 coaches in the MEAC that have won both?
A regular season and a tournament.
In the tournament. Because as much as winning that Texas Southern has done, Coach Jonas never won the regular season.
Right.
You look down at Prairie View, one of them. Coach Byron Smith, as much as he might be struggling right now, he has credit that he's done both. He's done the regular season and the tournament. Done the regular season twice. Didn't get a chance to defend his tournament title because of COVID hit that before the tournament was going. But the first year he did both. And you have Coach Ivory, that obviously with Valley struggling now, back at Pine Bluff. He got it done over there. So to your point, it would be fascinating. It's limited. Obviously, you got Coach Movement in North Carolina Central being able to do both. And then over there, Coach Norfolk State Spartan getting it done. Fascinating when you talk about that, Scott, in terms of what that looks like. So let's take our last break. We'll come back on the other side, talk about maybe key matchups. I do want to give some shout out to indoor track. I'll do a little bit of breakdown in terms of those coaches to give some excitement for that. And then we'll ask you some final thoughts in terms of what's going on. With that, we'll have our last break.
Shout out to the Morehouse SIAC indoor track champion on the men's side.
I do. He's supposed to save it.
Can't let it go. Can't let it go. Hey, congratulations to my alma mater, Tuskegee, who won the women too. So, but
good shout out. We'll be right back after this break.
Let's face it, shopping for insurance can be time consuming. That's why when it comes to your auto, home, and life insurance needs, make things simple and trust the experts at Allstate. They will help you get the coverage that fits your needs while helping you bundle your life, home, and auto policies. Bundling saves you money, sure, but it also saves you time, so you can enjoy the things that matter most even more. Contact me, Tammy Haynes, your local agent, for a free personalized insurance quote. Allstate, are you in good hands?
There's a shot to right. It could be. Right field. Grand slam. What a shot. That's how you get hot, young fella.
Thank you guys for what you do for HBCU athletics. This is a fantastic avenue for all of us. This is our ESPN, so we love what you guys do. All you guys at BCSN, we really appreciate what it is that you guys do for us.
Are you hungry for authentic Caribbean food like jerk chicken, oxtail, red snapper, shrimp, tofu, and rasta pasta? Well, find your way over to Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta.
Them belly full, but we hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, open daily from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. And on Friday and Saturday, we're open till 4 a.m.
Come to Mango's and put some spice in your life. Oh, we've got a good thing going.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock
in downtown Atlanta.
For more info or directions, call 404-698-3992
or log on to mangoscaribbeanrestaurant.com.
For instant coupons, text MANGOS to 313131.
Tell your mama hungry, papa hungry, brother hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant,
authentic Caribbean cuisines.
The Cavil Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, My colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call Cavil.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they want a lot, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Ville with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Give a shout out to Deuce, who's getting his baseball tryout today. He's connecting on a lot of those pitches, so he's putting in some time out there. So excited about Deuce Master getting it in. You know, I got to give him a little love.
Nice.
Shout out to him, Deuce, and Miles for their HBCU Sports show as well. I'd be remiss if I didn't give them a shout out as they are getting it done, giving updates from a children's, young kids' perspective of what's going on with the basketball season and giving some baseball love as well. With that being said, I want to go ahead. Appreciate you, Charles, giving them some shout out there.
No doubt. They're getting it done.
With that being said, shout out to, I'm going to go in this first. I'm going to go with the teams that have done it with consecutive years. You got Howard, and it's just something when you go on these roads. Howard's women have claimed their fourth consecutive indoor track and field title for the 2025 MEAC Championship. Also on the other side for the men, Norfolk State has done four, as they read up, four, as they like to say, if we give the basketball reference for those that remember that. They have done, the Norfolk State men have done 4 in a row. You have Texas Southern Tigers that claim SWAC men's indoor track and field. That is back-to-back for them. And 5 straight titles for Coach Duncan on the men's side, going back a couple of years when he started the reign with cross country. Be interesting to see, can he sweep it again as he did last year? Can he sweep outdoors? It'll be fascinating to see, and a lot of people will be interested to see what that looks like as Coach Duncan. And this is the first year where he took over the overall role of the women's program as well. And they have made tremendous strides as they moved up from the bottom of the conference to finishing 4th this year. So it'll be interesting to see what that looks like. And shout out to Alabama State women's as they just continue to do it as well. Multiple championships over the year. SWAC indoor women's track and field championship for the SWAC. So you got the shout out with Tuskegee Division II getting it done for the SIAC on the indoor women as they bring that event to the Division II. I'm excited about that inaugural event for the SIAC. Shout out to Dr. Holloman of getting that done. And then in terms of the inaugural wins there, you got Morehouse on the men's side getting it done for indoor track and field. So shout out to all those athletes, track and field, to getting it done and setting the standard of not just having a championship in there, but creating some runs in terms of the championship of how they're getting it done. Go ahead, Drew.
And Morehouse is 2/3 of a way to the trifecta, having run the cross-country championship in the fall and now the indoor championship in the winter. You know, only got one to go to get that trifecta.
Drew, you're doing an excellent job. Make sure you tell those folks with me, because I'm going to tell them that you represent, and I mean this seriously, because we get caught up and we love to try to make sure we're covering HBCU sports. But as a brand ambassador for the SIAC, Division II programs, because you show love for the SIAC, I mean for the CIAA as well, even for the NIA program, to be honest with you. But what you're doing for Morehouse in terms of making sure information gets out there. So we tease you and rib you from that perspective. But I want to say that this is an example of what it means to take the extra step to get the media attention that's necessary to put that information out there. And Morehouse, to their credit, are doing their parts in a lot of ways. putting them in positions, how much they've been able to do directly or just taking advantage of the opportunity, whether it's obviously the basketball game against Howard, the football game against Howard, the NBA Classic against Tuskegee, and much, much more in various classics that they're getting done. So Morehouse is branding themselves well, and they have the person perfect to do that.
Next year.
I hear you. Charles, I want to go to you and just kind of get your thoughts in terms of, as we start to close out the season, what are your thoughts? What are you looking at? What are you considering? What do you want to see from those teams that close out the regular season, or more to your point, as you said, finish strong such that they can make a run in a tournament? And that's regardless.
Yeah.
Whether you're talking about SWAC, MEAC, SI, CIAA this week, obviously in terms of the tournament for those teams that finished strong last week, closing out the season, or even at the NIA level, which we'll talk a little bit more on Thursday in terms of the HBCU AC, Red River Athletic Conference, Sooner Athletic Conference, Sun Conference, I should say, in terms of those teams. They're trying to make a push so they can go dancing.
Yeah, I always go back and I refer to John Thompson. I remember when he was doing commentary, and around this time of the year, one of the things that jumped out for him is how do teams close out games, the last 5 minutes, because normally once you get in the tournament, those games are just being played closer for the most part. So the question for me going down the stretch is, when you have to have a stop, are you getting a stop? When you have to have a good offensive half-court possession, are you getting good half-court possessions? So on the offensive end, are you finding your go-to guy and finding him drawing up plays for whoever your go-to person is, and whether they can get a good shot off. So it's those sorts of things that I kind of start paying attention to once we get to the bottom half of February going into March. That last crucial 5 minutes of gameplay, are you taking care of the ball?
That's right. Good stuff, Charles. I'm going to go to you, Drew. You not only, obviously, as we sung your praises in terms of what you're able to see on the SIAD side, what you're able to do from a media person that delivers the information, and obviously from a marketing perspective that you have added to from a program perspective of latent branding. But also you can draw off a little bit from your coaching experience. I want to ask you a two-part question about how do you want to see teams? How do you look at championship level teams that you've seen experience yourself? What needs to take place at this side? And on the other side of that, how do you want to see programs that are able to get this done take advantage of it from a branding and marketing perspective?
I'll start off with the team aspect. And at this point in time of the year, everybody's played everybody at least once. A lot of times, you've played your opponent twice during the season. So there are no surprises when you look at that team. When you pop that film in, you know exactly what player A, player B can do. You know what type of sets coach likes to run, coach doesn't like to run. What makes the difference during this time of the season? Number one, outside the natural, are you healthy? That's the number one thing.
Yeah.
Are you healthy?
We didn't bring that up. Good one.
Who players and coaches are the ones who have proverbial ice water in their veins? Because let's be real, the pressure this time of the season is intense. Your hands are wet. Whose hands are a little bit wetter than they normally are, and that pass slips through their hands and goes out of bounds on that crucial possession? Or they're able to control their energy, control their breathing, and still do what they do. There's someone in one of these stories, HBCU AC, Red River, CIAA, SIAC, upcoming MEAC, upcoming SWAC. There's going to be somebody who we've done, probably about 15, 20 shows this year. There's going to be a name that we have not mentioned all basketball season who's going to lead their team to a victory. And then there's going to be that other kid who we've been talking about all season long who's not going to have a game for one reason or another. Now, when that superstar who's giving you 15-8 all season is not able to do what they do, is that unsung person that I just told y'all about, is that on that same team? That's the team that's going to win. But if you got that superstar who gives you that 15-8, and you know, and then you got this other player, you know, there's just so many variables that you have to do. But the most important thing, Dr. Cavil, that I have learned on the championship teams that I've been a part of and have witnessed versus teams that have had all the talent in the world and have not been able to get it done. Two things. Are they having fun on their basketball court? And does that group truly love each other? Because when you love them, you're going to get them pride marks, as we call them, skid marks, diving for those loose balls, because every possession is important. When you love your teammates, you're going to get 2, 3, 4 jumps trying to get that offensive rebound or that defensive rebound. You know, those are the type things that I see from championship level teams. They love each other and they're willing to do whatever that it is that they need to do. You got 3 fouls in the first half. All right, I got you. That's that love that they have to make sure their teams want to go. And from a marketing standpoint, Dr. Cavil, I mean, take advantage. First of all, I hope you got all your students or whoever is controlling your social media for your particular championship run. I hope you got them on point. And athletic departments, y'all need to make sure that y'all send your team on the road to cover your team at these neutral site tournaments. Make sure you send your social media specialist. Make sure you send your videographer. Make sure you send your photographer along with your SID so that you can get this out, because we watch this intensely during this time. You got 2, 3 iPads going, you got the smart TV going, you got the laptop going, and you looking at your phone trying to keep up with all this action. And you don't care how you get it, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, app, stream, whatever. You just trying to get this information, and the job of people in my position to make sure that it gets out to my fans in real time. So take advantage, send your team, cover your teams, because the championship, I don't care what SIAC, CIAA, NAIA, whatever, a championship is special no matter what level it occurs on and no matter what sport it occurs on, and you want to be there to capture all of it.
Charles, I want to ask you this part of it. Now that you have transitioned and had a chance to call games, play-by-play, and color, what do you want to hear from the media from calling games this time of the year?
Ooh, that's a great question, Doc. I think the enthusiasm. I think the enthusiasm that captures the moment. Those are the things that you remember around this time of the year. Once you start getting to March Madness, you know, and it frames the action that you see when you provide sort of that exclamation point to something that happened tremendous. And I'm looking forward to it. Those are the things that you really remember, because it's almost like a soundtrack that goes with the play.
We'll close it right there. Perfect updates and several perspectives of what we want to see and what we expect, and probably in a lot of ways what we need to see. Thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta, the Dean of HBCU Sports, come from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, and A.D. Drew. Again, we hope you enjoyed the show. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Bill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, every Tuesday and Thursday. We'll be back on Thursday at 6 o'clock. Check us out as we give you updates and more information on the CIAA as we start to get into the meat of that tournament, preparing for the Final Four teams in the championship games at that point. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, that's DrKenyatta Cavil, Facebook and Instagram. We'll give you some updates on Thursday about those women games taking place in the SWAC. Obviously, you have some of the men's games. We might dibble on that a little bit from the OVC as well as the Coastal, talking about can we find the independent team that gets it done. Make sure we talk a little bit about them closing down this time of the year as well. Dream big, continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Charles?
Of course.
Drew?
Lecture.
Dismiss.